The fairy tale didn't just crack. It detonated in slow motion, under studio lights, behind palace gates, and across 1,000 glowing phone screens. What was sold as a love story for the ages has morphed into a storm of whispers, denials, legal warnings, and one author who refuses to blink. At the center of it all stand Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, a couple who tried to outrun the crown, only to find the crown's shadow stretches farther than California's sunshine. Because this isn't just gossip anymore. This is reputation, legacy, power, and a narrative spinning so fast nobody remembers where it truly began. One week it's sympathy, the next suspicion, then outrage, then silence so loud it practically echoes. And right when the noise seemed ready to fade, in walked Tom Bower, a man with a history of poking royalty, billionaires, and media giants exactly where it hurts. He doesn't trade in fairy dust. He trades in uncomfortable questions, interviews with people who talk off the record, and books that leave PR teams reaching for aspirin. Before we go further, listen to the tone that lit the match.
Because he's not very intelligent and undoubtedly remains damaged by the early death of his mother, Diana. And he very foolishly blames the media for her, in his words, murdered her, which is complete nonsense.
He hasn't got the intellect, he hasn't got the legal advice, he hasn't got the ability. And there was two agents who told horrible stories about her bullying and her oppression.
Harry hasn't got the intellect, hasn't got the legal advice, he hasn't got the ability, and there was an agent who told two agents who told horrible stories about her bullying and her oppression. The walls are closing in on Montito. What began as whispers in dark corners of the internet has exploded into a full-scale royal crisis that refuses to be silenced. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle built their post-royal life on one promise: protecting their children from the very spotlight that haunted Harry's childhood. But that promise is crumbling before our eyes. Tom Bower, the notorious royal biographer who's made a career out of exposing uncomfortable truths about the powerful, has dropped what many are calling a bombshell. His latest claims about Archie and Lilibet have reignited a firestorm of speculation that the Sussex camp cannot seem to extinguish. And this time, the silence from California is deafening. How did we get here? More importantly, where does this end? That right there, that tone, is why this situation refuses to die. Not because every claim is proven, not because every theory is true, but because doubt, once planted, grows like ivy on a palace wall. For years, Harry and Meghan built a brand around escape. Escape from palace rules, escape from tabloids, escape from a system they said nearly broke them. They crossed an ocean, landed in Montecito, signed massive deals with Netflix and Spotify, and told the world they were finally free to live authentically. But freedom in the spotlight is a tricky illusion, because when you monetize your story, the audience doesn't just watch, they start asking questions. And when answers don't come fast enough, other voices rush in to fill the silence. That's where Bower thrives. He frames his work as investigation, not gossip. He insists he follows paper trails, personal accounts, inconsistencies. Supporters call him fearless, critics call him ruthless. Either way, when he speaks, people lean in. Not necessarily because they believe every word, but because he's willing to say what others won't touch. And what's fueling the fire now isn't a single claim. It's the atmosphere, the pattern, the perception that when questions surface, the response isn't clarity. It's lawyers, warnings, carefully worded statements that feel like fog instead of sunlight. Inside this storm, Harry is often portrayed as the emotional center, the prince who grew up chased by cameras, who lost his mother in the glare of flashbulbs, who swore his own children would never live that way. Friends have long said fatherhood grounded him, softened him, gave him purpose beyond royal duty. That's why the current narrative cuts so deep, because the one role he seemed most certain about, protector, dad, cycle breaker, is now wrapped in public debate he can't control. Online forums dissect interviews frame by frame. Commentators analyze body language like it's forensic evidence. Every public move becomes a clue in a mystery some people are determined to solve, fair or not. Meanwhile, Meghan is often painted in a completely different light. Strategic, composed, always 3 steps ahead. To critics, she's the architect of the brand. To supporters, she's a woman navigating an institution that was never built to embrace her. Those two images collide daily in headlines, and somewhere in that collision, nuance gets crushed. Hovering over everything is the monarchy itself. King Charles III says nothing publicly. Prince William and Catherine, Princess of Wales, carry on with school runs, public events, balcony waves, the picture of continuity. The contrast is stark and people notice. Silence from the palace can mean dignity, it can mean distance, it can also mean strategy, because institutions think in decades, not news cycles. And then there's the media machine. YouTube commentators, TikTok breakdowns, endless threads pulling at every loose thread they can find. Mainstream outlets tread carefully, but they can't ignore the sheer volume of conversation anymore. When speculation trends for long enough, it stops stops being fringe and starts becoming a storyline in its own right. From a public relations angle, this is the nightmare scenario, a narrative you don't control, fueled not by confirmed facts but by unanswered questions. Each legal threat can look like defense. Each refusal to engage can look like evasion, even if the intention is simply privacy. And privacy is the word that sits at the heart of this storm. Harry and Meghan argue they stepped back to protect their family from relentless intrusion. Critics counter that selective sharing, documentaries, interviews, carefully released images, muddies that argument. Supporters say they're allowed to draw boundaries. Detractors say those boundaries seem to move depending on the platform and the paycheck. That tension is where the real drama lives. Not in any single rumor, but in the contradiction people think they see between "leave us alone" and "watch our story." Right now, the couple stands at a crossroads whether they admit it or not. One path is radical openness, documents, timelines, blunt answers that shut down debate in one sweep. Another is continued silence, betting the news cycle will eventually move on. A third is the careful middle ground, revealing just enough to calm the mainstream without feeding the extremes. Every option comes with a cost: pride, privacy, credibility, money, legacy. And legacy is the part nobody can spin later. Decades from now, when historians write about this era of the House of Windsor, this chapter will be there. Not just the wedding, not just the exit, but the era of suspicion, streaming deals, fractured family ties, and a public split between empathy and doubt. The cruel twist: the two smallest people in this entire saga have the least control and the longest future to live with whatever story hardens into history. And just when everyone thinks the storm can't possibly get louder, it does. Not with proof, not with closure, but with pressure. The kind that builds behind smiles, behind legal language, behind those perfectly neutral statements that say nothing and somehow say everything. Because the longer this hangs in the air, the more the story stops being about one book, one interview, or one set of claims. It becomes about trust, about why so many people feel confused instead of reassured, about why every attempt to shut things down seems to spark 3 new questions. Think back to that seismic sit-down with Oprah Winfrey. It was supposed to be the moment everything finally made sense, the pain, the exit, the rift. Instead, it became another chapter people still argue about years later. Some viewers saw raw honesty, others saw careful framing, and in the middle of that global spectacle, tiny details took on a life of their own. Pauses, phrasing, what was said, what wasn't, who was named, who was protected. Those unanswered edges are where today's chaos feeds. Then there's the alleged family conversation that keeps getting dragged back into the light. The one said to have happened before the wedding, in a relaxed setting, inside Clarence's house. Depending on who's telling it, that moment was either a dark warning or a clumsy offhand joke taken somewhere it was never meant to go. 2 wildly different interpretations, one emotional nuclear blast, and no recording, no transcript, no neutral witness willing to go public and freeze the story in place forever. So the gap stays open, and gaps are where narratives multiply. Out in California, life reportedly moves in a strange split screen. On one side, school runs, garden walks, birthday parties, the ordinary rhythms of parenting far from palace corridors. On the other, contracts, meetings, brand strategy, lawyers reviewing every sentence before it reaches daylight. The private family they say they want, and the global platform they continue to use. To supporters, that's modern royalty on their own terms. To critics, it looks like selective visibility. Close the curtains when questions come, open them wide when a deal needs promotion. That tension is the engine driving this whole saga. And hovering in the background are 2 children who never signed up for any of it, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Their names trend online before they can even read. Their baby photos are treated like state secrets by some and public property by others. Every rare glimpse becomes evidence in arguments they'll only understand years from now. Whether the scrutiny is fair or wildly overblown almost doesn't matter anymore. It exists, it's searchable, and it's not fading. That's the part that turns gossip into something heavier, because childhoods aren't supposed to come with comment sections. Meanwhile, back in the UK, the monarchy keeps doing what it has always done in a crisis. Stay calm, say little, carry on, balcony appearances, school visits, carefully choreographed normalcy at Buckingham Palace. The message isn't spoken, but it's clear. The institution is bigger than any one chapter. To some, that restraint looks dignified. To others, it feels like abandonment. But it's undeniably strategic. History shows the crown survives by absorbing shock, not reacting to every wave. Which leaves Harry and Meghan in a uniquely modern trap. They stepped away from the machine, but they didn't step away from the spotlight. In fact, in many ways, they built their own. Brighter, more global, less controlled by palace courtiers and more by streaming metrics and public sentiment. And that kind of spotlight doesn't come with ancient protocols. It comes with algorithms, with viral clips, with strangers dissecting your life at midnight for views. You can't sue an algorithm. You can't issue a cease and desist to 1 million anonymous accounts. You can push back on newspapers, yes. You can challenge broadcasters. But the internet is a hydra. Cut off one head, 3 more appear, each convinced they're just asking reasonable questions. From a purely strategic angle, time is no longer neutral. Every month that passes without a definitive cooling of the temperature makes the controversy feel more permanent, more baked into the public memory. What could once have been dismissed as a brief frenzy now starts to look like a lingering cloud, and yet the emotional reality inside their home is probably far less dramatic than the headlines. Diapers were changed, toys were stepped on in the dark, someone forgot to buy milk. Real life, messy and mundane, continuing while the outside world spins theories like a 24-hour slot machine. That contrast, ordinary family life versus extraordinary public narrative, is enough to make anyone feel like they're living in two dimensions at once. The real danger now isn't just reputational, it's exhaustion. Living under constant speculation grinds people down. Defending yourself endlessly or choosing not to and watching others fill the silence both take a toll. At some point, decisions stop being about image and start being about survival, emotional, psychological, familial. So where does it break? Maybe it's a carefully managed interview years from now when emotions have cooled and documents can be shared without feeling like surrender. Maybe it's a slow fade where the world simply moves on to the next scandal and this becomes a strange footnote in royal history. Or maybe it's something no one predicts, a reconciliation, a public moment that reshapes the narrative in a single image. Right now, though, we're in the messy middle. The part stories rarely show in movies because it's unresolved, uncomfortable, and full of contradictions. A prince who wanted out but can't escape the story. A duchess determined to control her narrative in a world that constantly rewrites it. A monarchy that survives by saying almost nothing, and a public that can't quite decide whether to feel protective, skeptical, sympathetic, or suspicious. All of it unfolding in real time, with no script, no guaranteed redemption arc, and no rewind button. One thing is certain, whatever the full truth is, simple, complicated, or somewhere painfully in between, it's being shaped right now not just by facts, but by perception. And perception, once set, is one of the hardest things in the world to change.